I even liked it better when it hit the 80s and it was ding, 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 this neurotic little beat I like better than the anxious, militant beat of rock and roll in the 60s. With a few exceptions, of course, the giants, the geniuses like Jimi Hendrix and Sly. To me, those are the great talents for me of the 60s. Rock and roll was born a black idiom, and it was a saucy kind of thing, It was designed to get your spirits high, and then it became this militant alarm ringing. And this is what I like outside of my own music. I'm not talking now at all about my own music,
When you were in the Canadian Band Aid, I also read somewhere that you said that you weren't really for those kind of things, the kind of events. Like the Band Aid, that it was...
that I wasn't for them?
Well, that you had some opinions about maybe people used it more for their own fame than actually for somebody else's famine.
Oh, and frequently the money never gets to the cause. They are a bit of a self-congratulatory... I think they do more to make heroes out of the people who support them than they actually do for the event. That's been proven. For instance, the Bangladesh, which was Dylan and George Harrison, there was a tremendous amount of celebration, and of course they were elevated as humanitarians and so on. The money never got there. It just came out of escrow a few years ago. So there is, but I'm not against these things. I still think that they do so much less than they seem to do, but that little that they do, as trivial as it is, as minuscule, is important. I'm not against them, no. That's just that the reality of them is there's so much less than they seem to be.
When you wrote the song Ethiopia, had you been there, or was it just through what you heard on the news?
Every night on Sunday night television in the States, there were a series of evangelical broadcasts, and the last one was really bait for bleeding hearts. It was ripe for scamming, and possibly was a scam. And there they would show, these poor and desperate people, and there would be a man and a woman, she dressed in Rodeo Boulevard safari suits, silk safari suits, wandering through. It was pretty awful. And they would flash the number of a telephone number where you could send money, and again, at the risk of sounding like a cynic, I don't think I am. I don't live in cynicism, Part of what may sound cynical is factual, so it's more... These things are difficult, I'm very empathetic with the Ethiopian people, but it has to run the gauntlet of their very corrupt government, bad organization to get the food to them in the first place, the fact that the government basically wants these people destroyed, and there is a kind of a genocide at work. Difficult, very difficult.
Do you feel more cynical now?
I don't think, in defense of my point of view, it is fairly well informed. I think cynicism, I have my moments of cynicism where my realism is exaggerated and flippant. But I think that it's based on unfortunate fact.
I have to come and see you, maybe once or twice a year.
A lot of your lyrics have been about your troubled relationships with men. Do you feel that you shift a bit now, that you emphasize different things in your lyrics?
Well, I did write about the anatomy of the crime, a lot, about people's inability to really love and their mistaken knowledge of what love is. Again, people are taught in these cultures how to be sexy. There's a lot of emphasis on being sexy and very little emphasis on loving, so that has been a constant theme with me. And I made it kind of my life's work to figure out what love was, to analyze my capacity for it, hopefully to increase my capacity for it, always with the optimism that if I was properly prepared and was capable of loving, that love would come to me. I'm happily married now, so it gives me space to turn to other themes.
Do you think an album like Blue could have been made today?
Not against the cynical climate of the 80s, where it's chic to be to insult the artists. You know, I mean, I took some flack back then for writing that intimately, but not of the viciousness that accompanied journalism at the onset of this decade. Were I young and writing like that at the onset of this decade, what I could imagine they would have done with that, oh, I don't think I would have survived it. I would have gone back in my shell and would never have had the courage to continue. Well, I don't know. Maybe I would have.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say because it's all hypothetical. I know in Montreal I just gave some interviews, and there the interviewers were encouraging me to write another album like that, and that's what I said to them. Are you kidding? You know, you guys would pin me to the wall if I reveal like these kind of vulnerable things. You know, to be vulnerable in the 80s is death itself, isn't it? I mean, the whole world is striving to be hip and cool and and well defended.
That doesn't leave much for music, though, doesn't it?
No, it makes music have a lot of posturing and not much real human spirit, but a lot of posing and posturing. I'm bad.
It's not your favorite record, is it?
No, I like that. I really see that's terrible, but I mean, it's typical of how we must present ourselves in order to be hip in this decade. Don't mess with me because I'm well defended. You would never go, like, please be my friend, I'm not very well defended. You wouldn't offer yourself forward. No, they'd eat you alive, wouldn't you think? I think so.
I read that you said sometime that the intellect was a very overrated instrument, that you'd rather work from intuition. Is that how you still work?
Well, my intuition, I think, is more accurate than my intellect. My instinct will tell me, first of all, like instinct is like a computer chip. It's like Shakespeare on a pinhead. You get a lot of information very fast. Nyip. And now if you want to expand on that, you would have to go to your intellect to expand it, to tell, but you would know nyip, that fast with instinct, a tremendous amount. And if somebody said, what are you thinking? You have to now go to intellect to tell it. Mm-hmm. So it's slower. Intellect is a lot slower. You can learn this fast. And sometimes intellect, too, will tell you, gets mixed up with image and all. It's slower and stupider. It's a good tool, but it's linear and analytical, and reason is like revered as being, the great standard. I think it's a wonderful tool, but highly overrated. Like I think that there are other ways that knowledge comes that are clearer and quicker, and they can't necessarily be explained.
So if people say to you that you are an intellectual artist, would you like that or would you not?
It's not true. But, in answer to your question, which direction will I go in? Well, there are all these possibilities. I've always wanted to do something very minimal with Miles, for instance. Maybe just voice and guitar and trumpet. Very small. Or maybe to put together a band like Manu Katché on drums. I mean, I have a lot of ideas, but they're all all idiomatically different. I don't know.